From the heart of South Asia to the crossroads of Central Asia, from the turbulent Middle East and North Africa to the power corridors of the West, where narratives collide, perspectives matter, stories connect. This is Beyond Borders, and I'm Omar Khalid. But on this Thursday, we'll continue to, with the same format, of course, in our show, taking you into a world without borders and boundaries and discussing stories that are extremely pertinent in this changing 21st century scenario. We'll begin with the top stories of the day, or as we call them, region lines. We start from the Middle East, where CENTCOM has said that U.S. forces have targeted dozens of IRGC personnel and military sites in response to Iranian attacks. Meanwhile, Jordanian's military says that its air defenses have shot down 5 incoming Iranian missiles. Foreign Office spokesperson Tahir Andrabi says that Pakistan is engaged with all the stakeholders as negotiations continue to bring the warring parties in the Gulf back to the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding. Moving on, a scathing report by the Global Civil Society Alliance, the Civicus Monitor, places India under intense global scrutiny, describing the current Modi government as among the worst performers on democratic values and civil liberties. The report says that Indian authorities are pushing a systemic crackdown on dissent, citing arbitrary arrests, suspension of free speech, and the misuse of anti-terror laws. Finally, Russia launches one of the largest overnight missile and drone attacks across Ukraine, striking multiple cities, causing civilian casualties and widespread damage. Meanwhile, Ukraine has also carried out long-range drone strikes on major Russian oil refineries. U.S. President Donald Trump says he urged Ukrainian President Zelensky to end the war during their recent meeting at the White House. Now, day 154 of the U.S.-Iran conflict has brought another dangerous escalation. American strikes have hit several parts of Iran, while at the same time, Tehran has launched fresh attacks across the region. Iraq, Jordan, Kuwait, and now Egypt are being pulled into the crisis, even as Pakistan and Oman struggle to bring diplomacy back to life. Whether it happens or not, we'll know in the next couple of days. To discuss this in more detail, we've been joined by Dr. Andakian. He's an international political analyst and joins us from Washington, D.C. Dr. Andakian, thank you very much to have joined us. The U.S. resumes major strikes on Iran, reportedly killing civilians and IRGC personnel. Has Washington, in your point of view, abandoned diplomacy for a wider military campaign? Also, Iran retaliates against the targets in Jordan and Kuwait, while claiming it damaged U.S. F-35 jets. Is Tehran targeting America, or is it dangerously widening this very war?
Right. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Omar, for having me. This is a double-barreled question. To answer the first part of the question, I would say that Washington did not abandon diplomacy. But the 14-point U.S.-Iran deal MOU that was signed in Pakistan in mid-June 2026 to halt the ongoing military conflict and reopen the Strait of Hormuz and begin the 60-day roadmap for comprehensive nuclear and economic negotiations did not achieve much, as Iran kept, the Strait of Hormuz under its hegemony, and it did not record any progress in the nuclear program issue during the 60-day, timeline. I think what currently is happening is that the U.S. is simultaneously adopting a carrot-and-stick strategy and diplomacy based on the peace through strength doctrine that President Trump adopted as his main framework and driving force behind American foreign policy. Now, in this case, the carrot is the framework deal and the MOU with the benefits for Iran, and the stick is, using force and military operations on the other hand. Now, going back to your second question, yes, Iran is targeting America, its regional allies, who are many, by the way, in the region, and the country is hosting its military bases and its civilian and economic interests. And by doing so, Iran is risking transforming the war from, being a bilateral war, whereby there's the U.S. and Israel on the one hand and Iran on the other hand, into a much regional one and into a broader regional war. Especially after attacking military assets in Jordan and Kuwait for the last few days or weeks, and recently the American civilian and economic interests in Egypt and Saudi Arabia.
All right, Dr. Andakian, I'd like to understand now the other side of the story. The U.S. and Saudi alliance has also bombed Iraq. Now, a lot of PMF fighters in Iraq have been killed, around 20 as per the latest reports. In your point of view, was this retaliation by the US justified, or in your point of view, was it a violation of Iraq's sovereignty?
Well, this is a great question because at the end of the day, it's a dilemma, and it depends on how you look at it. And to answer this question, I have to dig deeper into the premises, the factual premises that led to this question. Now, there are, opposing viewpoints and perspectives regarding what happened in terms of those who support the American retaliation and those who actually condemn it. Now, there are so many arguments around this matter, including those for justifying the American-Saudi joint military action. They base their arguments on three main points, including that this was self-defense, since around 30 drones and missile attacks were launched from Iraq, allegedly, against American personnel and Saudi oil infrastructure. A second argument point supporting this line of argument is the regional protection in terms of neutralizing cross-border threats when authorities cannot take care of militias functioning within its borders. Now, on the other side, the counter-argument or the sovereignty argument, of course, is led by the Iraqi government that the PMF is actually legally recognized as part of the military apparatus in Iraq. However, the problem here is how does the Iraqi government and the officials control the PMF, the PMF as part of the Iraqi military forces and decision-making in terms of war and peace and in terms of preserving its sovereignty. Now, of course, the Iraqi government and Prime Minister al-Zaidi rejected the American intervention or American-Saudi joint intervention and condemned it. But on the other hand, they're not doing much in order to stop these non-state actors operating from Iraq and using Iraqi soil to launch attacks against the US and its allies in the region.
Also, I'd like to understand, Dr. Isaac, that at the same time, there has been, a strike on a U.S. gas vessel on an Egyptian port. Do you feel the inclusion of Egypt and the Suez port also widens this whole conflict?
Right. Well, it seems that the scene of the military operation is expanding a bit recently. Because it seems like there are parties involved or belligerents involved in this conflict who are trying to drag Egypt and other major key players and actors in the region into this conflict. As we know, as of yesterday, there was the U.S.-owned vessel Energos Winter was attacked by drones in the Damiata port in Egypt. And of course, this is really alarming because it sends so many messages in different directions, including imposing certain strategic and security risks because of the geographic proximity of where the incident or the attack happened, as it's very close to the it impacts and affects the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden, and it disrupts the flow of goods and in the region there. Now, it also targets infrastructure, and it also targets American assets away from the Strait of Hormuz, as that has been mainly the scene of operations recently. Now, it shifted and moved on to the Red Sea, to the Suez Canal, and to Egypt. So all in all, this is really alarming, and it also impacts, or it has detrimental impact also on economic stability in not only in the region, but also worldwide. Because as we know that the Strait of Hormuz on the one hand and the Strait of Aden and the Red Sea on the other hand are really vital. Yes, are really vital waterways for international trade and goods passing through there. So It's really
Dr. Andakian,
alarming. And
I have another question. You talk about the Hormuz or the Strait of Hormuz. There were talks between Oman and Iran on some kind of a joint control or the control of a group of countries of the Strait of Hormuz, which was, of course, not accepted by Iran. But the talks on the Strait of Hormuz are still going on. But of course, at the same time, Iran is blaming US for the closure of Strait of Hormuz. How do you see all of this? Do you feel some kind of a deal might come as far as the Strait of Hormuz is concerned between Oman and Iran, or will Iran stick to its point of view?
well, I think that at the end of the day, there should be a compromise of some sort in order to address this matter. And I don't see this forthcoming anytime soon because of the absence of any common ground or commonality between what Iran wants on the one hand and what Oman wants on the other hand. So as we know that Oman is pushing towards more regional cost-sharing model, like the Malacca model towards the China Sea. And Iran, on the other hand, is pushing towards having more control, especially in terms of administrative control and having imposing certain or levying certain fees and tolls for the ships that cross the Strait of Hormuz. So, Oman is totally pushing towards, let's say, some sort of a compromise that makes everybody happy, and it's a win-win situation whereby it's imposed of trying to push towards the voluntary fee proposal, whereas Iran is trying to push towards the $2 million fee proposal per each vessel. As you see, there are two conflicting standpoints here, and I don't see any commonality coming across soon. However, I mean, this situation will not continue forever, and at the end of the day, it's a compromise game. And the best way or the best approach to this issue would be some sort of a compromise that combines both perspectives, or come up with a hybrid formula that ensures that both.
Dr. Andakian, for a hybrid formula to work, Dr. Andakian, for a hybrid formula to work, you have to have an agreement from both the sides. For the moment, it doesn't seem so, but let's hope that both the sides come to some kind of a formal conclusion regarding the control of the Strait of Hormuz. Speaking of mediators, Pakistan has also played a very important role when it comes to the mediation between the US and Iran on this very conflict. Do you feel, as per our spokesperson Tahir Andrazi Sahab, who's also talked today of the same thing, Islamabad is still continuing to revive this MOU between Washington and Iran? What can or what should Islamabad realistically do in order to bring both the sides together again for talks, for some kind of an agreement, a negotiated agreement on the future of the MOU?
Well, Pakistan is stuck between two rocks, to be honest, and nobody would envy its position nowadays. But it's doing a heroic. It's taking the role of a heroic, mediator between both parties. Now, usually in academia, when there is some sort of a deal or compromise or even signing a peace agreement, it should be guaranteed by a third party. But the problem in this case is that the parties involved and the belligerents are really, I would say America is a mighty power and Iran is your local and regional power. So the third party in this case, Pakistan, and by the way, Pakistan is not working by itself. It has other, other actors in the region that are cooperating and trying to work out this hurdle together, including Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Turkey. So I would say these, collectively speaking about this third party, there are so many things that they can do together in order to have leverage on both United States and Israel on the one hand and Iran on the other hand to resolve this matter, including, separating the current and the immediate conflict and danger in the region in terms of the Strait of Hormuz accessibility for these ships and detaching it from the bigger conflict and the wider and the deep-rooted conflict that we all know about, including the nuclear deal and who has the upper hand in the region. Now, what Pakistan can also do is leverage President Trump's the whole fire window that he gave and make use of that time in order to conduct some background diplomacy between Iranians and Americans. There's also building multi-layer and guarantee coalition in addition to the countries that I mentioned to increase the involvement of other regional players, including the Europeans and the Chinese. Why not? We know that the Chinese have leverage over Iran, and we know that the European Union countries are also heavily and detrimentally impacted by, at least from an economic perspective, by what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. And the last point I would raise in this regard is to ensure the implementation of the 14 clauses framework that was agreed in Islamabad in June. And of course, that is easier said than done because, as they say in Arabic, الشيطان يكمن في التفاصيل, and the devil lies in the details. So they postponed addressing the nuclear matter for 60 days, but nothing has been done thus far. And one of the deep-rooted causes of the current conflict was the nuclear matter. So by sweeping it under the rug does not solve the problem. They have to address it.
I agree. I agree. But I really like the fact that you highlighted this little dictum in Arabic. The devil is in the details. Let's talk about a bit of details when it comes to the oil prices. The oil prices are coming down, but at the same time, we are seeing increase in the number of strikes, and the number of countries that are getting involved is also increasing with every passing day. The latest being Egypt, and of course the attack on the U.S. vessel on one of its ports. This said, do you feel the world understands the repercussions of whatever is happening, or is it too optimistic of some kind of an avenue that would curtail this increase in aggression in the region, and that is why the oil prices are decreasing? What's your take on that?
Well, I'm not an economist by trade, but the way I read it, I think that the price drops are not sustainable. It depends on how the market is reacting and rebounding towards the stressors that are being imposed on the global energy market. Now, as we know from the European Central Bank report that was published recently, that about 20 million barrels per day were lost from the market due to the Hormuz Strait debacle. And however, on the other hand, Saudi Arabia and the UAE tried to address this gap by pushing more oil and aggressively pushing more oil and producing more oil using other venues for transporting the oil, including the Habshan and Fujairah pipeline. But that is not sustainable. All of this is kind of a band-aiding strategy. It's something temporary. Now, if this continues for the long run, of course, the oil prices will increase much more than it is now. It's taken a dip recently, yes, but I think that's temporary based on how the market is rebounding.
Another question regarding this whole region, the Houthi, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Iraq angle. Do you feel this situation could deteriorate in the coming days, or do you feel this is something that can be easily handled compared to what is actually happening within Iran?
Well, there's nothing easy in the Middle East, as you know. However, to answer your question, it all depends on Iran's behavior. If Iran is gonna, use its proxies in the region in order to impose more pressure towards the United States and have a leverage in terms of implementing the MOU and or leading to other sort of agreement by under the pressure of attacks from its proxies in the region, I would think it will get more complicated and it will take a snowball effect towards negative results. However, if Iran uses more a pragmatic and rational approach to address this matter, I think that going back to what is already has been agreed on, we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. There is a 14-point agreement that we need to stick by and abide by and implement. If they implement their side, I'm sure that the United States and its allies and its counterparts are going to implement their side of the deal too. But the question, the ball is in Iran's playground now. It depends how it's going to play it and play with it.
Dr. Andakian, this to and fro between the US and Iran as we speak, and whatever is happening, this, tit for tat, if I do this, I'll react in this way. Uh, and of course, within the US also, there is a lot of pressure locally on the current government as well to end this very conflict. Do you feel that the current US administration will succumb to this pressure, or do you feel this is something that it wants to take to a logical end or conclusion, whether it is in the form of more aggression or in the form of some kind of a deal with Iran?
This is yet another great question, actually. As we know, in the United States, domestic politics also play a role on how foreign policy is shaped, and all this conflict in the Middle East, especially the recent episode of conflict and war between United States and Iran, is having its negative repercussions, and it's affecting average American people's everyday life in terms of economy. So that is a pressuring point or pressing point that President Trump has to address, especially that we are, about to have the midterm elections on November 3rd. And people in America shape their political opinions based on various factors, including but not limited to economic factors. So, of course, America is economically not in a good position as it used to be prior to the war, but comparatively speaking, it's in a much better position than elsewhere, including Iran, for instance. So, in a nutshell, if President Trump does not take the American outcries in terms of the current deteriorating economic situation into account and address this war accordingly, I think that he's going to be in a difficult position to win the midterm elections. Now, how it's going to end, I don't think that it is imminent and very pressuring at this point, because he still has a timeline of 3 months in order to get there. However, time is not in his favor. And Iran knows this, and Iran is playing on this factor. They're trying to buy time as much as possible, to the extent that President Trump reaches to a point where he draws a red line, and he realizes that he needs to end this war, because otherwise that's going to impact his domestic image and his domestic political career in the United States.
Dr. Andakian, you talk of time, you talk of red lines. When we talk of red lines, the first country that comes to my mind that has crossed all red lines is Israel. And when it comes to time, do you feel Israel has time by its side? I know Netanyahu recently met with Donald Trump, and there was quite a positive sentiment emanating after this very meeting with between Donald Trump and Netanyahu. But what could be the actual outcome? In your point of view, Trump pleased with Netanyahu? Is he putting pressure on Netanyahu? Is Netanyahu putting pressure on Donald Trump to continue with the aggression? What's going to be the outcome?
I think there is, mutual benefit in this, especially regarding the personal benefits for Benjamin Netanyahu. As we know, Prime Minister Netanyahu has many domestic issues and problems in Israel, including his impeachment regarding allegations for bribery and corruption in Israel. So it's in his vested interest to elong the term of this war as much as possible, because whenever there is war or Israel is in a state of war, he will not be held accountable from constitutional and domestic punitive law perspective in Israel. So it is in his interest to prolong the term of this war. On the other hand, President Trump also has some domestic issues, and that's not a secret. As you know, there are many attempts to impeach him, including but not limited to his alleged relationship with the Epstein files. So by prolonging the term of this war, it would be giving them or themselves a lifeline, a much needed lifeline for extending their term and power, and therefore derailing people's attention from other domestic matters and personal matters related to both personalities, including President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Also, Dr. Andakian, I'd like to understand, do you feel Ukraine has entered the fray of this very conflict as well, with it trying to strike or striking an Iranian vessel, and of course Iran retaliating? Do you feel this might put a more wider perspective as to this very conflict? Could this conflict kind of enter another conflict? Could it become part of a bigger conflict? I mean, I'd like to understand your point of view regarding this.
Yes, well, I mean, you cannot isolate what's happening with Ukraine with what's happening with Iran, because I think that they are intertwined to a certain extent. Because by using Iran as a launching pad, of Western, let's say, policies towards Russia, it's also a tit for tat game. So what happens with Russia also impacts with what happens with Iran because both are allies. Now, there might not be a direct relationship between them or between both conflicts. I mean, the war in Ukraine and the war on Iran. However, what happens in either contexts actually would help the other context, depending on who's doing what. So, of course, bringing Ukraine into the scene, trying to bomb Iranian vessels, and also trying to weaken Russia would also help detaching Iran from its regional and international ties, because as we know, Iran is perhaps in the bigger picture, it's the middleman, or it's a proxy of Russia and China. So by weakening Russia through Ukraine, Western countries would be also weakening Iran.
Of course, I understand, and that is why I asked you this question. Thank you so very much, Dr. Ishaq Andakian, to have joined us from Washington, D.C., and to have given us such a wide perspective of where things are going as far as the Iran-U.S. conflict is concerned. Thank you so very much, sir, to have joined us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's now take you to South Asia.